Over the past several years, there have been a series of tree strike incidents and fatalities during wildland fire chainsaw operations. These incidents have occurred across different agency and land jurisdictions and have involved sawyers of varying qualification levels. Serious injury and death from incidents related to hazard tree felling and chainsaw use are a near-yearly occurrence within the wildland fire community. This is a disturbing trend that begs the question, why? Findings from several of the accident reviews compiled in the recent tree felling accident analysis published by the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center indicate that improving cutting area control and the risk assessment process, or tree size-up, as well as a better understanding of tree conditions and other factors which influence operational complexity, are common factors that may help get at the root of the problem involved in many accidents and injuries. Findings also indicate that components of both the tree size-up process as well as the complexity analysis are being missed during the initial tree size-up as well as during the cutting operation as the complexity changes. In this video, we will focus on chainsaw operational complexity and the ongoing tree size-up, as well as the point at which the complexity of a cutting operation changes. The Hazard Tree and Tree Felling Subcommittee is finalizing a new standards for wildfire chainsaw operations guide for recommendation to the National Wildfire Coordinating Group that will help to identify critical standards for tree felling and all chainsaw operations, including tree size-up elements. These standards will clearly define that sawyers will complete a procedural size-up prior to engaging in chainsaw operations. The intent of this standard goes a step further to infer prior to engaging in all chainsaw operations, meaning that each cut you make and each time you squeeze the throttle, you, as the chainsaw operator, are reassessing your size-up process and the complexity of the cutting operation. This may seem like a daunting task, and overall, we as chainsaw operators are good at the process, but we must be better.
Yeah, I think it's critically important to always use a consistent size up. I think just with fire and a lot of different other things, it's really important to have these systems that we can rely on and go back to. I worked as a ski patroller for a few years, and when we do our medical assessment, they teach the same thing, that you always want to do it the same way every time, be super consistent with it. And so that's something I've always related to the size up. When I started, it was hard for me if I didn't have a consistent process to go back to. You'd miss things, you'd forget certain factors, and it's just not safe if you're doing it different every single time. You're gonna miss something. It's just not gonna work out great for you. So, yeah, I think it's super important to really learn a consistent way to do it and to teach younger sawyers to have to do the same way every single time. And, it's something also, if your nerves are going, if you're on a dangerous tree, it's something that's going to help keep you calm. It's something, and going through that process and that pattern that and understand is really going to help you get everything right, calm your nerves. You're not going to miss anything.
In the arena of wildfire chainsaw operations, there are many different opinions of what the size-up process should be. Since 2016, the U.S. Forest Service has officially adopted the mnemonic OLEC: Objective, Hazards, Leans and Binds, Escape Plan, and Cutting Plan. The Department of the Interior wildland fire agencies generally refer to a size-up like the one that's outlined in Task Number 18 of the NWCG Faller Position Taskbook. If you ask any number of engine, heli-tack, or hand crews about their size-up process, you will likely receive the same number of variations due to differences in culture, experience, and personality.
Yeah, so for me, kind of my thoughts on why we see different procedures, different policies, if you will, or even just a different process throughout, the entire wildland fire service is really there's there's no one shoe fits all approach. What works out of Washington State may not work out of South Dakota or out of Florida. Tree types, tree species, just that how tall trees are. Here in East Idaho, we don't have really tall trees aside from junipers. So what works for that hotshot crew in Region 6 or that engine crew may not necessarily work for me. And so that's why I think, just in the fire community and even just agencies, you have those different procedures. For me, is that positive or negative? I would say really it's kind of in between. Again, I think we allow the individual programs, the individual crews, districts or forests to tailor their program to what fits for them. But the negative aspect of that is if I send my engine crew headed up to somewhere up in Oregon, and they get into a situation with these larger diameter trees that are a lot taller, that's where I think our procedures might fall short of the expectations they have up there. But my hope is that they still fall back to their basic training and go through the size up process. I expect that my crews will size up or size down a juniper tree. It's no different than getting ready to fall that 40-inch snag as well. And when they start through that size up process, if they find that it just exceeds their scope, exceeds their capacity to take that tree down, then it's also my expectation that that's when they either pass or ask for extra assistance or even guidance, some mentoring on at the base of that tree to get that tree down safely. So again, for me, I think it is both positive and negative. It's just how we operate within those sideboards that are established for each of us.
A few things about the size-up process should always be the same. The minimum components that size-up should capture. The firm belief that it should be procedural and done the same every time. And the fact that the size-up is an ongoing process that changes cut by cut and with each new situation a sawyer encounters. Within the procedural size-up process, it is essential that the sawyer also identify the good or bad side of the tree and incorporate that into his or her cutting plan. Accident reviews have identified this as a common theme during numerous incidents. The complexity analysis refers to the sum of all parts of the cutting operation. This is a combination of the components of the size-up, considerations of tree species, defects, mortality, human factors, environmental factors, and risk. Determining the complexity of the cutting operation is one of the most important processes for a sawyer to understand and implement, and it should be performed on an ongoing basis. No matter how hard we try, we will never be able to remove the human factors from felling operations, which sometimes cause us to feel rushed or tired, or to want to prove ourselves with a chainsaw in our hands. Therefore, we must be diligent in our awareness of how these situations and pressures affect our decision-making, and how these influences, at times, cause us to skip over the basic procedural size-up components.
Yeah, so some of the human factors that we encounter during falling ops really, there's so many. Just a couple that come to mind real quick here. You have just fatigue. You have, let's face it, we get complacent. We have egos, pride, not wanting to look like we don't quite know what we're doing, and just plain inexperience. There's so many different factors that'll pull at a chainsaw operator out there. And again, it's, just tying it back to the basics. If we can strengthen and maintain just a good solid foundation, when the fatigue sets in, when the sense of urgency picks up, or you're being pushed by that hotshot soup to keep that production going, there's line to put in, there's snagging to be done. We still need to take that tactical pause, whether it's just very briefly to run through our size ups, make sure that we're capable and we have the skill set, and we've mitigated any potential outside risk on when we take that tree down or pull that cord.
Human factors on the fire line and during felling operations have also been known to diminish our standard of cutting area control, which should be one of the highest standards we hold as a chainsaw operator. Some examples of these situations include operational tempo, inexperience, and normalization of deviance. In October of 2019, as part of the corrective action plan in response to the fatality of Brian Hughes on the Ferguson fire, the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center published the 2004 through 2019 Tree Felling Accident Analysis. This report looked in depth at all felling accidents over that time frame and provided some similarities between them and additional recommendations that sawyers should consider when engaging in chainsaw operations. A topic of highlight is when complexity changes during chainsaw operations. Several accident reviews indicated that workers may not have acknowledged that their risk exposure had significantly increased mid-operation. Much like the decision-making and risk management processes, the size-up and complexity analysis processes are intended to be ongoing and complementary. As the sawyer progresses through their cutting plan, they should remain vigilant to new information and observations and indicators that they either miss something or that the intended outcome is changed. As supervisors and experienced sawyers, we must be teaching our coworkers from the very beginning to maintain awareness of this change in complexity and to reevaluate their cutting operation. Many times, this tactical pause will afford us the opportunity to look at things from a different perspective, to let our tired arms rest for a minute, or to simply catch our breath and get some oxygen back to our brains so that we might think outside the box a little better.
You know, when we talk about the reasons that you might see complexity changing, mid-process, during your felling operation, it's just, there's a lot of things. I mean, the most common, of course, would be, a hang up, but there's other things I think that might be more dangerous to people that they just maybe don't recognize until it's too late, and maybe a more thorough size up could have identified something such as a compromised holding wood, it's rotten or it's punky. One thing that we encounter here a lot is especially in hardwoods is calculating lean. If you miss calculating that lean a little bit, it's very difficult. We're talking more about limb weight. Another thing is bypass or Dutchman, and you clean it up and then you don't recognize that you've really changed the direction of that fall. And so I think one of the main thing to take away is your plan. And if anytime you deviate from that cutting plan for any reason, you need to reassess based on that new information. That's probably added to that complexity. You need to reevaluate that.
Often during this time, we'll also notice that what we thought was a cleared out work area and good escape route is no longer valid, which almost ensures we should start the entire size up and complexity analysis process over again. There are always different options for moving forward when our plan doesn't come together quite the way we expected. Whether it's to simply take a step back and reevaluate, then re-engage, or to bring in a more knowledgeable and skilled sawyer to assist in the operation. This option is widely used and many times successful. However, according to the tree felling accident analysis, of the 53 incidents reviewed, 42% of the time the person struck was not cutting, including in 5 of the 8 fatalities. This alarming statistic also emphasizes the need to maintain our cutting area control throughout the entire operation, even as we expose more sawyers to the risks of our operation. Lastly, as shown in the 2020 NWCG Refresher Series video, Felling Hazard Trees, Does It Need to Come Down? As sawyers, we always have the option not to physically cut the tree, and instead walk away or find alternate techniques of removal.
Yeah, some of the reasons that I see complexity changing potentially mid-process during a felling operation is when we've developed a plan, we've articulated a plan, and all of a sudden the plan changes. That to me, it's kind of like a barometer or a thermostat. When we said, hey, we're going to start cutting on this side, we're going to finish on the other side. And then for whatever reason, the plan that we've implemented didn't work and we find ourselves back on the other side again. That to me is like that thermometer that's starting to go up and complexity clicking up. Maybe we're exposing ourselves to the hazards that we intentionally we're trying to avoid there. Or when we implement a plan and you think you've got everything set up the way that you want it to go and it doesn't go. So you start to do things to improvise on the plan, whether that's taking up a little bit more holding wood, whether that's, punching the center, adding a couple more wedges. We thought we had it eyed up as far as the lean goes and it was going to go over in one wedge and it doesn't. Or when something happens where, I've had it happen to me where you're starting to pound a wedge in and you're like, all right, you got it set pretty nice. And you go to give it a real hard tap to drive it in and all of a sudden that wedge pops out the back, tree sits back. And, it's anytime there's a deviation from what has been articulated, I believe in your size up process, when you do a thorough process, is an indication that complexity has changed. And also influences that cause you to reevaluate. I think that's, to me, what would cause you to take that tactical pause. It's one of the reasons I believe it's super important when you're going through any size up process is to do that process, articulate that with somebody else, again, to both build that kind of common language that's used between sawyers. Of course, we know when we're at the stump, that person should be well away, but it's just another set of eyes, even from a distance, saying, hey, something's going on, something's changed, that maybe even the sawyer, because of noise and, being focused on a particular cut they're making, they may not be aware of. And how do you teach this to sawyers to take a tactical pause? Again, that would be back if something has changed from the way you discussed or the way you thought it was going to happen. As soon as something's changed, that's the time to shut that saw off, step back just a minute and look at it. It's easy to armchair quarterback accidents and injuries, things that happen. You often read the lessons learned reports and you think, man, how could that have ever happened, right? It's easy to do that in hindsight. But I think when we encourage folks, when the plan has changed, when something that you implemented and you thought was going to take place didn't end up taking place, that's the time to take that tactical pause. I think a lot of that comes too with humility around it, right? Or sometimes something didn't go the way we wanted it to, and we just think, we take a little bit more, cut a little bit more, it's going to somehow correct the problem and fix it. But being able to step back, even and being humble enough to admit, like, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore, asking for somebody else, maybe walking away from the tree, flagging it off, but encouraging folks that that's okay and that's acceptable during saw operations and actually something that's encouraged.
The points we've discussed today are known by most, if not all, sawyers, but are frequently overlooked or ignored. As we continue down the path of creating safe and effective sawyers, we must remember the principles we've covered here. The procedural size-up and complexity analysis are ongoing efforts, which should be revisited many times throughout a cutting operation. There are many human factors and situations we might encounter which influence our decision-making and our ability to reassess our cutting operation mid-process. Above all, we always have the option to walk away as the situation changes complexity or ask for guidance from more experienced sawyers. Please visit the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center to explore more about chainsaw accident reviews and the tree felling accident analysis.